Millionaire left his pregnant fiancée. 3 years later, he sees her at a charity event and is stunned. Before the story begins, tell me here in the comments, where are you watching from? I love knowing how far these stories reach. And if you enjoy emotional love stories full of twists and unforgettable endings, subscribe to the channel. That really helps me keep bringing more content like this for you. Camila Rivera arranged the paperwork on the table while the muted sound of heels and voices echoed through the halls of the Montgomery Foundation. It was the third time she organized a major charity event for Charlotte's elite, but tonight felt different. A strange restlessness in her chest, a coldness that didn't come from the air conditioning. Camila was 26, light brown skin, and long, straight hair always worn down, flowing down her back like silk. It was impossible to pass by her without noticing her quiet beauty, marked by intense dark brown eyes that seemed to observe the world with depth and reserve. Her navy blue dress was simple and elegant, but revealed her firm, determined posture. She walked between the tables with a clipboard in hand, checking the decor details with the precision of someone who knew every inch of that luxurious ballroom. That's when she felt the gaze. She didn't need to turn around to know. She always knew when he was near. Ethan Montgomery had just arrived, the eldest son of one of North Carolina's most influential families. Ethan was known both for his coldness in business and his impeccable appearance. He was 31, fair-skinned, gray-blue eyes and light brown hair styled perfectly. Tall, athletic, elegant posture and a calculating look, he seemed sculpted to be admired and feared. But with Camila, he let another version of himself slip out, lighter, more human. He crossed the room and approached as if he needed to see her even for a few seconds. Camila kept her eyes on the clipboard, but couldn't stop her hands from trembling. "You look beautiful tonight," he said softly, quietly. She slowly raised her eyes. "I'm not here to look beautiful. I'm working." Ethan smirked slightly. Even so, it's impossible not to notice. The tension between them was palpable, like a silent electric current. It wasn't the first time they exchanged ambiguous words in empty corridors or behind stage curtains. But everything they lived happened in the shadows, hidden from the world's eyes. For Ethan, it was a matter of reputation. For Camila, it was love. That night, after the event ended, the two met in the foundation's back garden. The midnight quiet surrounded the low lights. Camila, arms crossed, avoided his gaze. "I'm tired of pretending this doesn't affect me," she said. "It's exhausting living in secret. I deserve more." Ethan took a step forward. "Do you think I don't feel the same? But I was raised with rules, with an image to preserve. What do you think my family would do if they discovered us?" Camila stared at him steadily. "I'm not a scandal. I'm a woman who loves you, but I won't beg to be acknowledged." He stepped closer and gently held her face. "Do you think this is easy for me? You changed everything. I just don't know how to face it." She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to hold back tears. "Then maybe you need to decide before I walk away." It was the first time she turned her back on him, and he, frozen, didn't stop her. Ethan stood there, watching the woman he loved the most walk away in silence, as if something inside him already knew that if he lost her now, he'd lose her forever. Camila hurried through the foundation's empty parking lot, her heels echoing against the cold concrete in the night. The night wind messed with her long, straight hair, sticking strands to her face dampened by tears she refused to drop inside. Ethan's words still burned in her chest. "I just don't know how to face it." He always said he loved her, but always added a but at the end. She clutched her light coat to her body and walked toward the car, struggling with the urge to turn back, to hear one more empty promise. She didn't want any more pretty speeches in the dark. She wanted light. She wanted to be seen. She wanted to be claimed. Inside the salon, Ethan remained standing in the same place, in the garden, eyes fixed on the path where she disappeared. The cold breeze didn't make him move. He felt the familiar emptiness he'd masked for years under contracts, meetings, and expensive glasses of wine. But this time, the emptiness had a name: Camila. The next day, as if nothing had happened, the Montgomery Foundation posted on social media the success of the charity event: frozen smiles in photographs, family speech about social responsibility, no mention of the woman who had coordinated everything masterfully. No word about Camila. Camila, in turn, returned to her modest apartment in the south side of the city. It had beige walls peeling in some corners, simple curtains, and a plant on the windowsill she watered religiously. It was her small sanctuary, where nothing needed hiding. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she looked at her phone. No message from Ethan, no call. And deep down, she already knew he wouldn't reach out. Camila closed her eyes and took a deep breath, running her hand across her belly. She didn't yet know if it was real, but something inside her was changing. A premonition, a mist, period, a slight queasiness that didn't feel like nerves, a shiver that wasn't from the cold. And then, as if speaking out loud only to herself, she murmured, "If it's true, I'll raise this child with or without him." She didn't want the love she felt to become poison, but it was hard to forget someone who made her feel alive with just a look. Flashbacks washed through her mind like small waves. The first kiss in the dark event room, his smile when she stumbled during setup, his hands on her waist in silence while the orchestra rehearsed. "You are the only real thing in my life, Camila," he once whispered, "but I can't lose everything for us." Now she understood. Those who love don't choose what to lose. They choose what to fight to keep. The following week, Ethan was in the Montgomery Industries headquarters office, standing before a glass wall overlooking Charlotte under the late afternoon sun. He pretended to listen to his advisor's report, but his eyes betrayed his thoughts. That woman, the strength with which she walked away, the firmness in her words. Did she still love him? "Mr. Montgomery, would you like to include the coordinator from the last event in the next charitable project?" asked his assistant. Ethan hesitated. "No, bring someone else." It was that simple decision that sealed his own fate. His world moved on, but Camila's was about to change completely. And this time, without warning, 2 days after the cold meeting in which Ethan vetoed Camila's name, he flew to New York, accompanied by members of the Foundation's board for an international philanthropy conference. It was January, the cold cut through the streets, and the city seemed grayer than he remembered. The chosen hotel was luxurious, with broad views of Central Park and softly carpeted quiet halls. To his surprise, Camila had also been scheduled, last minute, to cover for the new coordinator who had fallen ill. Maybe fate was playing its final card. On the second day of the conference, after the last lecture, Camila was alone in the hotel lobby, holding a glass of white wine, watching the distant city lights through the glass. She wore a simple black dress, with thin straps that contrasted with her light brown skin and let her long, straight hair fall like a frame over her shoulders. Ethan approached silently, carrying 2 glasses. He was without a tie, the top button of his shirt undone. A small gesture that, coming from him, felt like a confession. She turned her face when she sensed his presence, but didn't pull away. "I brought red wine. You always prefer it, even when you say you don't care," he said, offering the glass. Camila hesitated for a second, then she took the glass, meeting his gaze. "Does that change anything?" Ethan sighed and stood beside her, looking out at the city. "It changes what I feel." She smiled sadly. "But it doesn't change what you do." He leaned back against the glass wall. "Camila, I'm not the man you think I am. Then show me who you really are." Ethan didn't answer. But that night, in a gesture more fragile than bold, he reached out his hand to her as one asking for peace, not apologies. Camila took his hand firmly. They went up together to the 15th floor, in silence. In the room, the atmosphere was tense and intimate. The curtains were open, the city lights still shining outside, but inside everything was dark except for the yellowish glow of the lamp. When Ethan hugged her, there was no rush. Camila felt that behind that controlled facade was a whole man asking to be saved from himself. "I've always been afraid of not being enough, or of being too much, of ruining everything I touch," he murmured, his eyes locked on hers. "I never wanted your fortune, Ethan. I just wanted you to stay," Camila replied, before kissing him with the delicacy of someone who still believed. It was a long, intense night, filled with muted confessions and silences full of feeling. For the first time, Ethan spoke about his father's absence, the pressure of being a Montgomery, the lonely nights in huge mansions. For the first time, Camila believed he could change, but what seemed like the beginning of something new turned into silence again. Days later, back in Charlotte, Camila was feeling the symptoms: dizziness, morning sickness, sensitivity. She didn't want to believe it, but she didn't run from it either. She bought the test herself, took it at home, sitting on the cold bathroom floor with trembling hands. When she saw the positive result, she cried. Not in despair, but in certainty. She picked up her phone, typed and erased the message 3 times. Finally, she took a deep breath and wrote, "I need to see you. It's important." Ethan replied a few hours later, arranging a discreet meeting in the foundation's parking lot after work. When he arrived, she was wearing a long coat, her hair down and face serious. "Camila, what happened?" he asked, noticing the tension in her eyes. "I'm pregnant, Ethan." The silence hit like a dry blow. He swallowed hard, looked away, and took longer than he should have to react. He didn't hug her, didn't ask if she was okay. He just stood there, silent, with his hands in his overcoat pockets and his eyes on the ground. "You're not going to say anything?" she asked, her voice wavering. "I need to think. This changes everything." Camila felt her stomach twist. She stepped back. "I didn't expect flowers, but I at least expected respect. I expected that you'd be here." Ethan looked at her with empty eyes. "It's complicated, Camila. It's not just about us." She let out a bitter laugh. "It never was about us, Ethan. It was always about them." With no more words, Camila turned and walked away. And even with her world falling apart inside, she didn't cry. Not there, because now it wasn't just about her. It was about someone not yet born, but already deserving of real love. Camila stayed up all night. Sitting on the small living room sofa, wrapped in a blanket, she stared off into nothing. The faint light from the kitchen illuminated the silent space, while the ticking clock marked the slow passage of the early morning. The pregnancy was now a reality, but what hurt most wasn't the fear of the future, it was his absence. She checked her phone for the 10th time. No message, no call. Deep down, there was still a hope, fragile, persistent, that he would show. Up at the door, say it was a mistake, that he loved her, that they'd care for this baby together. But the phone remained silent, just like him. The next morning, with deep dark circles and a worn face, Camila got up, put on the light blue shirt of the foundation, and went to work. She walked into the building with measured steps, avoiding everyone's gaze. She knew something had changed. She could feel it. At the end of the day, when she checked her institutional email, she found a message titled "Contract Termination." She clicked it. The Human Resources Department informs you of the immediate termination of your service with the Montgomery Foundation. This decision is final and will not be reviewed. We thank you for your contribution until now. No signature, no explanation, no word from Ethan. Camila felt her hands tremble. The floor seemed to vanish beneath her feet. She stood up and walked to reception, where Sarah, one of the longest-standing employees, looked at her with downcast eyes, avoiding her gaze. "Were you aware?" Camila asked, her voice choked. Sarah hesitated, then whispered, "They asked me to keep it quiet. They said it was better this way, because of the family's reputation." Camila didn't reply. She grabbed her bag, walked to the elevator, and pressed the button. As the doors closed, she took one last look at the place where she had dreamed of growing professionally, and where, ironically, her worst nightmare had begun. On the other side of town, Ethan was locked in his penthouse, his eyes fixed on a contract on the glass table. The TV was on the news, muted, his phone next to him, full of unread messages. He read and reread the email he had sent personally. In a sleepless early morning, "Camila, I'm sorry, but I can't go on with this. I can't be a father now. I can't be your safe harbor. It's better if we go our separate ways. Forgive me." It was cowardly. He knew that. But he felt as if swallowed by an abyss of expectations, pressures, and fear. His mother had already suspected. The foundation's board questioned his image, and the idea of a child out of wedlock was destined to be scandal. He gave in, just like that, and at the same time destroyed something that would never return. The following week, Camila vanished. She resigned from the small apartment, sold the car, disconnected her phone number. No social media, no trace. Charlotte ceased to be her home. She found refuge in a smaller town, a few hours away. She rented a small studio behind an old house where nobody knew her. She spent her days walking quiet streets, trying to find strength within herself. At night, she talked to the baby as if he were already there. "You're not to blame for anything," she whispered softly, her hand on her still small belly. "And I promise I'll do everything so you never feel what I'm feeling now." Despite the abandonment, despite the silence, Camila still carried a spark of hope, a doubt that refused to die. Was the love they had real? Or was it all an illusion built behind closed walls, whispered promises and hidden touches? She wanted deep down to believe that somewhere inside that cold man, the Ethan who once made her laugh in the middle of an empty room still existed, the one who held her hand as if the whole world could collapse, and everything would be okay, as long as they were together. But now she no longer had time for questions. She had a life to take care of. And with every step, no matter how hard, she was learning to walk alone. In the silent penthouse, Ethan, for the first time, felt he might have lost something that money could never buy back. Time passed, but the scars didn't fade. 3 winters. Later, Camila pushed a grocery cart with a handwritten list and a smiling boy beside her, swinging his little legs and singing softly. Mateo was 2.5. Fair-skinned, light brown hair falling over his forehead, and silvery blue eyes that cut through the world like living memory. It was impossible to look at him and not see Ethan. Camila raised him with courage. During the day, she worked as an assistant in a small community library, and at night she baked sweets to order for neighborhood parties. She lived in a simple 2-story house where every detail was the result of her effort. Toys organized in colored boxes, a wall covered in children's drawings taped up, and a single frame on the dresser, the only photo she had ever taken with Ethan, now tucked face down in a drawer. She tried not to talk about him. She tried to erase his name from conversations, from memories, from the questions that would inevitably come one day. "Mommy, why are my eyes different from yours?" Mateo asked one night while they drew on the living room floor. Camila swallowed hard. She stopped drawing and smiled tenderly. Because they're special, the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen. Matteo smiled in satisfaction and went back to sketching stars on the paper. Camila got up slowly and walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood lights blinked, and a light breeze drifted through the curtain. For a moment, she closed her eyes and allowed herself to remember. His touch, the low voice saying he loved her, the woody scent, the smiles amid stacks of foundation papers, and the silence. The silence that came after everything. Meanwhile, a few miles away, in a mansion surrounded by Greek columns and symmetrical gardens, Ethan dined in silence beside Lauren Cartwright Montgomery, his wife for a year and a half. A marriage built, with family alliances, silent contracts, and social convenience. Lauren, blonde, elegant, a former TV reporter and daughter of an influential senator, made sure to maintain appearances. She talked about political events, cosmetic surgeries, and real estate trends. "Can you at least smile for the photo, Ethan?" she said, raising her phone. "It goes in the social column tomorrow, and you look like you're at a funeral." He forced a smile, looked at the camera, and returned to his plate without appetite. Lauren sighed loudly. "It seems you're still thinking about her." Ethan stared at her for a moment. He didn't deny it. "It's not just about her," he replied. "It's about what I've become." Lauren laughed sarcastically. "You became exactly what everyone wanted you to be." That was never a secret. After Camila disappeared, Ethan sank into an automatic routine, meetings, business trips, rehearsed dinners. But no achievement filled him. At night, lying on Egyptian linen sheets, he stared at the ceiling and wondered where she was. If she was okay. If she had moved on. If the child who might be his even existed. "She looked at me one last time and walked away," he thought, "and I didn't have the courage to follow." In his private office, hidden behind a false panel, he kept the only item he still couldn't get rid of, the photo of them both at a social project opening, smiling at each other as if the whole world fit in that moment. While Ethan lived trapped in a soulless castle, Camila built a home with a few bricks and a lot of love. She taught Matteo to speak softly in the library, to share toys with children who had less, to respect silence and value small gestures. It was a simple life, but full of meaning. Even so, there were nights when she lay awake, listening to her son's light breathing and wondering, will he ever want to know who his father is? Time healed wounds, but didn't erase them. His absence was like an old perfume, not there anymore, but still lingering in the air, still living in her son's eyes, in the songs she avoided hearing, in the places she no longer visited, and even trying not to admit it, Camila knew. Part of her still wanted him to seek her out, not out of regret, but because deep down, she believed the love they had could not have been a lie. On the night Matteo turned 3, she held him in her arms as he slept and whispered, "You are the best part of everything that hurt." Outside, a letter sent by the NGO Camila now worked with was on its way through the mail, addressed to the Montgomery Foundation. Without her knowing, something was about to reopen old wounds, and perhaps start something new. The old Charlotte City Hall ballroom was decorated with elegant simplicity. Warm lights hung from the ceiling, and floral arrangements with sunflowers and lavender adorned the light wood tables. It was an evening celebrating the new phase of an NGO working with single mothers and vulnerable children. The event, discreetly sponsored by local businesses and, unbeknownst to Camila, also by the Montgomery Foundation, brought together influential people, photographers, and the press. Camila arrived with Matteo. She wore a dark green dress of lightweight, fabric that highlighted her long, straight hair, now streaked subtly with golden highlights from the sun. Her brown eyes seemed even deeper under the stage lights. On her face was the serenity of someone who learned to walk alone. She was stronger, more beautiful, but it wasn't manufactured beauty. It was a light that came from within. Matteo, with his silvery blue eyes identical to Ethan's, wore a white shirt with suspenders, walking proudly beside his mother, holding a small envelope with drawings he would present on stage. He smiled at everyone as if the world were simple. Ethan was at the other side of the room. He had been persuaded by Lauren to appear in public after weeks away. His appearance remained impeccable. Dark suit, groomed hair, composed expression. But his eyes wandered unfocused until they locked on the stage. And then they froze. Camila, and with her, a boy. The seconds that followed felt eternal. Ethan stood still, motionless. His heart pounded out of rhythm. It was like watching a dream mixed with guilt. That woman, the woman he loved, whom he abandoned, was there, more real than ever. And that boy, his eyes left no doubt. He knew, deep down he always knew. "Ethan, are you okay?" Lauren asked, touching his arm with forced gentleness. He didn't answer. He just took a step forward, as if his body moved by instinct. On stage, the host announced, and now the founder of the Roots of Hope project, Camila Rivera, will share her journey and introduce little Matteo, the soul behind it all. Camila took a deep breath before speaking. When she looked out at the audience, her eyes swept over unknown faces until they found his. The shock was immediate. Words vanished from her mind for a second, but she kept her composure. She gripped the microphone firmly and spoke with a calm voice, full of emotion. "For a long time I thought I needed someone to save me, but time has shown me that sometimes we rebuild ourselves from the fragments we have left." Matteo was quietly drawing at a small table nearby, unaware that his biological father was watching him with teary eyes from the back of the room. When Camila stepped down from the stage, she was approached by dozens of people. Reporters, supporters, old colleagues. A tall, blonde man with a gentle smile and a warm presence greeted her with a long hug. His name was David Monroe, a community psychologist and project collaborator. Ethan watched the scene as if he'd been punched in the gut. "Who is he?" he murmured. Lauren heard and pressed her lips together. Perhaps someone who valued her at the right time. Despite the applause and greetings, Camila felt his gaze on her every step. It was as if her skin reacted to Ethan's presence even before she saw him. When she finally saw him again, standing near the exit door with his eyes fixed on her, something inside her trembled. He took a step. She turned her face away, noticing the discomfort. David approached. "Are you okay?" Camila answered without hesitation, "I am. I just saw a ghost from the past." And she walked away, hand in hand with Matteo, the boy smiling. Unaware of the weight of what had just happened, Ethan remained there alone, surrounded by unfamiliar faces, trying to find air in the crowded room. Now that he had finally found her again, what would he do with this truth? The next morning, Camila was in the kitchen making pancakes while Matteo drew on the floor with colored pencils. Sunlight poured through the windows, and for a brief moment everything seemed peaceful, but the silence was broken by the doorbell. She approached the door cautiously. As she opened it, the world stopped for a second. Ethan. He stood there in a dark suit, more beaten down than she remembered. His grey-blue eyes seemed to ask for help, but Camila kept her posture firm. "Camila, can I talk to you?" She didn't reply, just watched him, surprised and tense. "Is Matteo here?" he asked, discreetly looking inside. "He's drawing, and you shouldn't be here." "I needed to see you," he insisted. "Yesterday, when I saw you on that stage, when I saw Matteo, it hit me like something I pretended didn't exist." She crossed her arms. "Did you pretend or choose to forget?" Ethan lowered his eyes, ashamed. "I made a mistake that costs me every night." Camila inhaled deeply. Her voice came low and steady. The mistake was the email. The mistake was the silence. The mistake was leaving me alone in that room. Pregnant, humiliated, and not knowing how to start over. I didn't have the strength, he confessed in raw sincerity. I was a coward, and I still am sometimes. But I never stopped thinking about you. She felt her heart quicken, but didn't let it show. She had learned to survive on the words he never spoke. No, they no longer had the same effect. What do you want now, Ethan? You want to try being a father after almost 4 years? You want me to pretend nothing happened? I want a chance to look into your eyes without shame, to ask forgiveness, to maybe start over. Camila pressed her lips together. Inside a whirlwind, outside control. Do you want us back or just want to ease the guilt that haunts you at night? She shot back, eyes locked on his. Ethan fell silent. The question hung in the air like a verdict. Just then, Mateo appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding the drawing he had just made. "Mommy, look, it's our house, and that's me with you." The child's eyes met Ethan's, and a moment of deep silence settled. Ethan kneeled slowly. "Hi, champ. You draw really well." Mateo looked at his mother, then at him. "Are you Mummy's friend?" Camila answered before Ethan could speak. "He's just someone from the past, sweetheart. Someone who needs to learn to live in the present." Ethan stood up, swallowing hard at the weight of those words. "I will prove I've changed." "You don't need to prove anything to me," she said. "You need to prove it to yourself." Across the street, David watched the scene from a distance. He had left work at the community center earlier and came to visit Camila and Mateo, as he often did. When he saw Ethan at the door, his expression shifted. That evening, Camila received a message from David. He's going to come back more times. Are you ready for that? She stared at the screen for a long time before replying, I don't know. But now, I'm not alone anymore. David, who had become a silent safe harbor in recent months, saw what Ethan still could not. It wasn't just the past he would have to face. It was a new present where his place might no longer exist, and in the midst of that invisible tension, a new chapter was approaching. Because Ethan would not give up easily, and David was realizing that for the first time in years, he had something to lose. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when everything changed. Camila had just put Mateo to sleep. The boy's breathing was slow and steady, curled around the blue pillow with a rocket drawing. A fine rain tapped on the window of his bedroom, the sound calming, almost hypnotic. In the hallway, she used the rare silence to organize some old boxes in the high laundry closet. They were items hastily stored when she moved into the townhouse 3 years ago. Among loose papers, notebooks, and photographs, a yellowed envelope fell out from the bottom of the box. It bore the discreet seal of the former Montgomery Foundation. Camila frowned. She opened the envelope and found a letter. The handwriting was familiar. She carefully unfolded the letter and read, Camila, if you're reading this, maybe I finally found the courage to reach out to you. Maybe not, but since the moment you told me about the pregnancy, my life stopped. I was weak. I disappeared. But what nobody saw was what I did that same night. I sat in that empty penthouse and began to write. The letter you never received, because my mother intercepted all of them. I wrote to say that you are the greatest mistake I ever let slip away, and the greatest love I ever knew. Camila's hands began to tremble. The envelope was thick. 1, 2, 5, 8 letters, all dated from the most painful months of her life. Those words she'd waited for so long were there quietly sleeping. I looked for you, called, sent messages. I was told you had traveled, disappeared. When I asked about you, my mother said she did a favor for your career. And I, like a coward, believed her. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the wave of emotion rising uncontrollably. The pain wasn't anger. It was longing. longing for what could have been, for the man who behind his weakness still loved her. I don't know how to be a father, but I know that if there's still a thread of hope, I want to be part of it. You, the baby, everything. Camila sat on the cold laundry room floor, the letters spread around her eyes brimming, her breaths uneven. For years she believed he had forgotten her, that his rejection was a conscious choice, that there had never been a fight. But now, everything gained a new dimension. She remembered Ethan's look at her front door days before. The hesitation, the regret, the silent plea. Everything was in the letters, everything he never had the chance to say out loud. The pain returned like an old whisper, but with it came an even greater confusion. What if he had tried? What if he really was stopped? The hatred she had cultivated to survive now mixed with an involuntary tenderness. In the final letter, a closing line. If one day you find this, please tell me if there's still a place for me in your story, because in mine you never left. Camila hugged the letters to her chest and wept. For the first time in years she cried without anger, without shield, without pride. She cried, longing for a home she never got to live in. She cried like someone who maybe still loves. Her phone buzzed in the living room, a new message from David. Are you sure he doesn't deserve a chance to explain everything? Camila looked between the screen and the letters, and she knew that soon she'd have to make a decision. But before that, she needed to understand one fundamental thing, what was still beating inside her own chest. That night, after putting Matteo to bed, Camila sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea in her hands. Ethan's letters were once again tucked away, but this time in a wooden box on the counter, visible. No longer hidden like ghosts, they were open wounds waiting to be healed. Rain tapped lightly outside, the sound bringing a strange peace. Camila looked out the window when she heard soft knocks at the door. For a moment she hesitated, but deep down she already knew who it was. She opened it slowly. Ethan stood there, drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, his dark clothes soaked, his eyes wet. On his face was something she hadn't seen in a long time. Defenseless vulnerability. You must be crazy, coming here in this rain, she said, unable to hide her surprise. I had to see you. I had to know if you read it, he replied, his voice hoarse from the cold. Camila kept the door just ajar. I did, every word. And I cried. But that doesn't erase what happened. Ethan stepped forward, not intruding, but offering his heart. Nothing will erase it. But if there's still a corner in you where my name lives, please let me stay. She stared at him for long seconds, not knowing what to say. She was tired of being strong, tired of resisting, and even with every reason to keep him away, a part of her cried out for a moment of peace in arms that knew her soul. Then she opened the door. The next moment, Ethan gently pulled her into his arms and held her as if he'd been trapped underwater for years and was finally breathing. And there, in the rain streaming down both their faces, he kissed her. It was not an impatient or rehearsed kiss. It was a silent kiss, heavy with pain, longing, and hope. Camila resisted for a second, then she surrendered. Because sometimes the body remembers before the mind allows it. Their next meetings were discreet. They met again, like before, in the silence of night, in remote places, as if that love still needed to hide to survive. But now, something was different. It was no longer clandestine passion. It was an attempt at rebuilding. Ethan brought her coffee when she left the library. Camila smiled when she saw him arrive, even trying to hide it. There was comfort in the small gestures, a desire to make it work. But Matteo's world was no longer so innocent. One afternoon, while drawing on the living room rug, the boy looked up and asked with the unfiltered simplicity of children, "Mommy, who is the man who makes you smile?" "Camila," Her bros. What man, sweetie? The one who hugs you when I don't think you're looking. She was silent for a moment. Then she sat beside him and gently stroked his fine hair. He's someone from the past, trying to be part of our present. Matteo thought for a moment. Is he going to live here? Camila smiled, tears in her eyes. I don't know yet, my love. That same night, Ethan waited for her in the car parked a few blocks from home. When she got in, he noticed something was different. Matteo asked about you. Ethan's eyes widened. And what did you say? That you are someone from the past, trying to be part of our present. He nodded slowly. Camila, if you let me, I want to be part of everything. Of you, of him, of your life, not hidden. For real. Camila looked at him in a long, intense moment and said only, then prove it. The following week, while organizing paperwork for the Roots of Hope project in her makeshift office at the community library, Camila received an unexpected call. It was from the production team of a national TV show. They had seen the buzz around the charity event, the discreet talk about the unconfirmed reunion, and especially the impact of her work with single mothers. Camila Rivera, this is the team from Lives That Inspire. We want to share your story, the real one. From the beginning. She was silent for a few seconds, the phone warm in her hand. My story? She asked, her voice cautious. Yes. We know there's so much more behind the woman who raised a child alone and founded a project that changed lives. Do you have the courage to tell it? She ended the call without responding immediately. Her heart pounded fiercely. This would be the first time she could say everything. Name the pain, talk about the abandonment, the email about how she was. Nearly erased from her own existence, but something inside her hesitated. That night, Ethan waited for her in the car, as usual. When she got in, he noticed something was different. You look pale. What happened? She handed him the phone so he could see the network's offer. He read in silence, his face changing slowly. Are you going to accept? He asked in a low tone. Do you think I shouldn't? She replied, looking directly at him. Ethan took a deep breath. The truth needs to come out. But if you do, my family will react. My mother will expose every detail of your life. They'll try to destroy you. Camila leaned back in the seat, tired. They already tried. I survived. He turned to her, more serious. What if this costs what we're trying to build? She looked down, feeling the weight of the decision. For the first time, it wasn't just about courage. It was about the future, about protecting Matteo, about protecting what was still being born between her and Ethan. The next day, Camila received a notification. The production team was awaiting a formal reply. She spent the day restless between meetings and NGO activities, feeling the internal pressure grow. That evening, while packing Matteo's backpack, she found a folded piece of paper at the bottom. It was a drawing. Matteo had drawn the three of them together, him, Camila, and Ethan. Three figures holding hands, smiling. In the background, a yellow house with flowers and a tree, and above, scribbled letters, My Family. Camila's eyes filled with tears. In the simplicity of that childish drawing was the answer she needed. The next morning, she called the show's producer. Thank you for the offer, but my story does not need a stage. It needs peace. Ethan received the news in silence, relief contained in his eyes. Camila looked at him calmly. If I told it, it would be for justice. But maybe it's time to let the past stay where it is. He gently touched her hand. You just proved you're stronger than all of us. Camila smiled. No, I just chose what my son drew, us, together. Time seemed to take on a new rhythm. Months passed since Camila chose to preserve her peace instead of exposing her pain. The decision that seemed small had changed everything. No cameras, no headlines, but with clear intentions, she and Ethan began to rebuild, brick by brick, what had been shattered by pride and fear. On a spring afternoon, the two walked side by side in front of an old renovated warehouse on the outskirts of Charlotte. The space, once an abandoned depot, now bore a discreet, hand-painted sign: Living Roots, Support Center for Abandoned Mothers. Camila watched as women entered with their children in their arms, received guidance, food, and support. Ethan organized the delivery of supplies with other volunteers. For the first time, he seemed free. No suit, no mask, just himself. Truly, it's becoming what you dreamed, he said, stopping beside her with a soft smile. Camila looked at him tenderly. I dreamed of many things, but this, here, with you, never seemed possible. Ethan looked down for a moment. To think I almost destroyed it all. It doesn't matter anymore, she replied gently. You chose to stay. You chose to change. You chose to love. Breaking with his family wasn't easy. Madame Colette Montgomery disowned him publicly, accusing him of moral betrayal and disloyalty. The social circles that once praised him now saw him as a shadow of the heir he should have been, but Ethan no longer cared about inheritances that came with shackles. He found a new identity, and this identity had a name: Matteo. On weekends, they were inseparable. Liam, the once shy, light-eyed boy, now ran in the center's garden with other children, while Ethan taught him to ride a bicycle, and Camila led art workshops for new moms. One calm afternoon, after an impromptu picnic under a blossoming tree, Camila held her son as he slept in her lap. Ethan sat beside them, observing silently. Are you still afraid? He asked, looking at her as if he still couldn't believe she was really there. Of the past? Sometimes. But it no longer rules me. She turned to him and squeezed the hand resting on her leg. Today, for the first time, I feel loved without conditions, without hiding, without fear. Ethan leaned in, kissing her forehead gently. Shortly after, Matteo awoke with sleepy eyes and a lazy smile. Mommy, can we live here forever? Camila smiled, brushing her son's hair, and with a light heart she answered, maybe we already do, because home is where love never leaves. She held him tight and looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes. Tears that no longer came from pain. Everything we went through was to get here. Love didn't destroy us. It healed us. In the background, the sun set slowly, tinting the sky with golden hues. And for the first time, there were no more secrets, no silences, no open wounds. There were just 3 hearts beating in unison. And finally, peace. So, what did you think of this story? Leave a comment with a rating from 0 to 10 and tell me which part moved you the most. If this story touched your heart in any way, like the video, share it with someone who will also be moved, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. And before you go, I've picked another moving story that will surely touch you even more. You have to watch it.